Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we do return on what many do call therapy, but quite frankly right now it's almost a Samaritan check-in. If you're with us for the very, very first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on Blue Sky too. I'm joined by three top-tier panellists that are going to try and tell us exactly where Tottenham are, because for many out there, I'm not sure where any of us know where Tottenham are right now as a football club. You know, out of 2 domestic cups in the space of a week, and it just feels like we are seemingly floating to exist, but with no real desire, determination to do anything else. Like I say, joined on this show by the wonderful broadcaster extraordinaire Russ Williams. I'm joined by the wonderful Patrick Tyrant. God, we've missed Patty's smile. I don't think I've seen Pat smile for over a year. And I'm also joined by the wonderful Marlon at the Spurs Kings that are going to try and, like I say, offer up just some understanding of where Tottenham are as a football club. And you know what, to start this show, as many I think were concerned and were worried about, that's that. Tottenham are out of both domestic cups in the space of 4 days. 34 years without winning the FA Cup now for Tottenham. Spurs, since their last semi-final appearance of 2018, I've got to read this out, 2025 fourth round, 2024 fourth round, 2023 fifth round, 2022 fifth round, 2021 fifth round, 2019 fifth round, and the fourth round as well. Utterly disgraceful. And that's why I will highlight at the very, very top of this show, this is why we are really pushing and why we do need every fan now to come together and really push the emphasis on it's time for change and to try and change the culture, the nature of this football club. You all guys will know ahead of next Sunday, the 16th of February, there will be a protest being held outside the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That will take place roughly approx 2:45 ahead of the Manchester United game, being obviously once again put together by the wonderful guys over at Change for Tottenham. For those that are watching the show right now, we are giving you some details as to how you can get all that information ahead of that protest and what there will be the requirements of, and how there'll be a real push for international fans to come together as one, along with, like I say, typical Spurs fans week in, week out there at that stadium. We need our international fans. We need every Tottenham fan that is going to be going to that Manchester United game to come together and to really stand for a cause that we want our football club back. We want our culture back. We want to be talking about Tottenham winning. We don't want to be talking about Tottenham exiting the nature of competitions the way we have done in the space of the last week. And look, is it all Daniel Levy and Enix's fault? Probably not, but I would say they're a huge reason as to why Tottenham find themselves where they are right now. And many will look at the players, many will look at the manager, and rightly so. And that's why we need to have those debates during this last one on Spurs to simply understand where we are at. But until we do hold account those people that run this football club from the very, very top, then I just don't see anything changing under this current ownership, where we are as a football club. And it is now time that every single Tottenham fan comes together and pushes for change. Russ, I'm going to come to you if I can to open up what's going to be one of those tricky last one on Spurs shows that for many out there, this is therapy. I can tell you hosting them doesn't get any easier week upon week. And if it wasn't for the amazing support we get from our wonderful fans, loyal viewers and listeners, I'm not sure we could continue to keep on doing this. Look, 2 flat and uninspiring performances from Tottenham back-to-back over the course of 4 days. Sees Tottenham exit 2 domestic cup competitions. And now for Spurs, the rest of the season holds on Tottenham winning the Europa League. Villa win it by 2-1. They should have and could have scored more. As for Kinski, who made a couple of great saves despite the error for the first one. Many would argue that Tell's first goal for the club is really a very small silver lining in a catalogue of just disastrous situations over the course of the last week. Russ, how do you see where we are as a football club right now? We'll come on to a lot, but game itself, Russ, what did you make of the game?
Well, dear leader, good evening to you. It's great to be on with Pat and Marlon again, straight talkers. Good evening, good day, good morning, everybody. I just want to say a quick thank you to Drew N17 on Twitter who sent us screenshots, Rick, of the latest prices for London to Sydney flights, ranging from £892 to £1,164. Nice one. Where are we? Another pretty awful performance. We're a football club, Rick, in Tottenham Hotspur Football Club is in dire straits. Tottenham Hotspur Entertainment Emporium has never been doing better. We've got a team of players who look rudderless, confidenceless, haven't got any fight, square pegs in round holes. Yes, we've got injuries. We've got a coach who, for a club that is led by data, they are the only club in the Premier League, who wouldn't or who haven't pulled the trigger on the coach, because the stats are absolutely dreadful and have been not only for this season, but as we know, towards the back end of last season, well, probably from about last February. We are in a terrible, terrible place. And I understand completely why, Change for Spurs have organised this big event that you were talking about. And the reality is that for me, even when the injured players come back, our coach will still be playing them out of position, a lot of them. We're too easy to carve open. We've got a donut midfield. You just go straight through the middle. There's nothing there. We see it week after week after week. And we're on a dreadful run of form because the coach and the coaching staff can't seem to get the best out of the players, save for the kids, who I think have shown some of the more experienced players what a little bit of guts and determination is about. But it is a sorry situation. And, I'd love to just sit here and make notes tonight, Rick. I feel as though I haven't really got much more to say. And I agree with everybody that we have to have a change. And football clubs, being football clubs, they will sack Ange Postecoglou whenever that day comes to try and save their own skins. It's what clubs do. And he will be fired at some stage. He will. It's a certainty.
We'll come on to that, because it does feel, with regards to Ange Postecoglou, that it's a case of when rather than if at the moment. I mean, I've got to say, for someone that, for me, that I've done this show for the last 7-8 years, this is becoming really, really grating. And I will make that point. If it wasn't for the wonderful people that stop me day in, day out on the street and tell me how much they love the show, I'm not sure much mentally we could keep going back through this. I'll bring you in, Pat, if I can. The Telgo aside, such a disappointing League Cup exit from Spurs in the space of 3 days. 1 goal to the reply of 6 when you add up Villa's and Liverpool's as a whole. Just a terrible, terrible, gutless week for the football club. I mean, Pat, I know, let's be honest about it. We'll come on to Ange shortly. He wasn't your man to begin with. But in terms of the 2 games you've witnessed over the course of the last 4 days, I mean, do you have any words for the games before we get into where we are on the respective debates there are out there at the moment?
First and foremost, I want to say what's up to everyone tuning in. If you're listening back to this tomorrow morning on the commute to work or on the way to the gym or wherever it may be, I hope you have a good week. And to all the Spurs fans tuning in right now, I'm sorry, man, because this is woeful. It's dreadful. It's so hard to pick ourselves up and keep going again. And I can't lie, if it wasn't for the love of you guys and Ricky, I would have pulled a sickie, because this is awful, man. It's so hard to do these pods. It really is. Like, it's hard to, and you see comments and people like, oh, it's going to be a negative show. And I'm like, what ounces of positivity do we have to pull from? Possibly, the kids, possibly Danso looked quite decent, Tell getting a goal. But other than that, there's nothing to really, and if you're looking at the season, it's just, it's a shambles, isn't it? We were banking on the cups. Obviously, we're still in Europa, but if we continue to play the way we're playing, that won't last long, if we're being honest. At the beginning of the week, people were telling me, I feel we could get something at Anfield. And then after we lost at Anfield, it was, I think we're going to get something today. And I'm like, really? Like, looking at the way we've been playing the last 20, 30 games, what gives you that confidence that we was going to get something? And both games went to script. We're playing better teams and we don't set up in any way to really get something out of the game. Today, like Russ said, in the midfield of the park, it was so easy to literally walk the ball through. And for me, Ange just keeps making mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. Like today, the setup was wrong. Why are you starting Tao on the left and Sonny down the middle when Son looked actually decent in the last game before last, where he was actually running at people on the left-hand side? And Tao, we know, primarily is a striker. So why would you not start him down the middle? And allow him to press like almost like a Solanke does. And if he's getting that touch in the box, he's more than capable to finish. So that was wrong. Obviously, the midfield setup was wrong, and he changed that at half time. And I just don't understand what he's doing more often than not. And in terms of where we're at, obviously, we're now out of 2 cup competitions. We have to ideally primarily focus on the league and pushing up that table. And now it's Europa or bust. If he doesn't win the Europa League, then it is probably the worst season we've had in 12, 13, 14, maybe 15 years. We're that bad. Looking at the table, we're 14th. I looked at our stats. There's 26 defeats in our last 46 games. That was something that I obviously heard on the radio. And I looked at our last 20 games. It's a 35% win rate. When you take that to our last 30 games, it's a 40% win rate. So we're pretty much at 37% over the last 20 to 30 games, which is shambolic. And other managers have been sacked for a lot less. And I don't really know where to go from here, because even if we get rid of him, who comes in? And obviously, ultimately, it stems from the top. We keep saying the same things week in and week out, like Russ said. And exactly, it is time for change now, man. To be fair, I know a lot of you guys may not have known me before the podcast and streams, but I've been leaving out for like 10 to 12 years. I saw through all this bullshit a long time ago. And I'm so glad that everyone else has cottoned on. The only problem is that they're cottoning on because the results have been bad. I wanted to be proven wrong. I wanted for us to, once we moved to the stadium, for Levy to actually put his money where his mouth is and promise all the things that he said, or deliver on all the things that he promised. Obviously, he hasn't done that, and we've gone backwards at an alarming rate. And it is time for a change now. And to be fair, I know the marches and all of that are good, and they're something, but realistically, the only way to really put a dent in Levy's pocket is to not go to the games, to buy your seat and not turn up. When you see the empty seats in the stadium on TV, that doesn't look good. And obviously, when people aren't in the stadium buying drinks and beers and food and all of that, that will really send a message out. But
can I say that, Pat, on that point?
yeah,
I'll let you reply.
yeah.
I honestly do think, though, when it comes to protesting and the fact that I don't think a lot of the corporate sponsors around Tottenham are going to like the fact there'll be noise driven from the fans. I mean, that is not a good look when you've got, I know a lot of people that go to Tottenham, whether it's to close business deals or to bring associates of different kind of caliber and types. And I just think the more emphasis and noise that is being generated via protesting outside that stadium, that is not a good look for the football club. And I honestly do believe that will, I think, over time, enforce the need that this club will maybe look at the fact, you know what, the fans aren't enjoying it. How can a manager, also, I will just say this on Ange, how can a manager, to some degree, and look, we've got thoughts of Ange, we'll come into that shortly, I'm going to let you respond to this, Pat. How can anyone operate, in my opinion, under the circumstances of what is now the constraints of being the Tottenham Hotspur manager? Just for me, you don't get the tools that you want. You don't get the tools over a length of time to be able to do the job you want to do. And I think the only way you can do the Tottenham job to any relative success, really, is getting every drip of ounce out of every single player, which, to be fair, is to a degree what Mauricio Pochettino did during his time here. And at the one opportunity where the club needed to back him, they failed to do so. And we'll come on to the fact that there's an argument out there that, how are we in a situation where Ange Postecoglou has been given the amount of money to be allowed to build what many would look at as a squad that's still in a rebuild trend? And at the end of the day, however you look at it, however you want to tally it up, how was Mauricio not given the funds and not given the time to be able to, mould a squad into his own? Again, it's quite damn when you look at how much money has been spent under Ange Postecoglou. Over 300 million Ange Postecoglou has been given in terms of funds to be able to try and rebuild a Tottenham side. And you can't argue he's lost Harry Kane. He's not got a prime Heung-Min Son. He's currently got 9 injuries. Not taking that at all away from him. But in terms of the standard of quality we're seeing out there, it isn't good enough. I just want to go back on that point I said there. When it comes to the ball, Pat, I do think, and I think it's really hard to ask fans to stop going, because to some I know this is their escapism. This is their life. Tottenham is the one thing they look forward to at the end of a week when they've worked hard, they've busted their nuts at work, they're looking forward to going to Tottenham, and suddenly to take that away from them, I just think as fans to give that up is so hard. So I do think, Pat, that you come back in. I do think protesting over time, if it's consistent Again, if it's done in the right way, I think will hit the football club. The same way, Mike Ashley decided to walk away from Newcastle, the same way Manchester United got a form of investment. I think over time, if the protests are consistent and if they are done in a certain particular way, I think that will start to ram home. We want to change. I'll let you come back on that, Pat.
No, personally, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know. I think it's too much of a slow burner for me. And unless they're done in the thousands, then it's kind of like, it's difficult. And don't get me wrong, I'll be at the next one, and I really hope that they take flight. But it's too much of a slow burner. I personally think even if fans go to the game and walk out at a set time, it could be 24 minutes, 25, and they all march out at the same time. Again, that sends a huge message to the powers that be and the corporate sponsors and everyone else. But I just, I want to see change, and I just, I'm disillusioned, basically, and I don't know. It's hard, really and truly. How much power do the fans have? Unless, like I said before, you do what you do in other countries, like your Portugals and Italys, where they actually take matters into their own hand. But obviously, I don't want to be an advocate for that, especially, on a podcast. So it's really difficult, but this can't continue. It really can't, because we are actually sleepwalking into being a lower half table. Like we'll literally be in a relegation scrap next season if this continues. We're getting progressively worse and worse and worse. And in cup competitions where it's do or die, you lose or you go home, go hard or go home, like they say in the States. We've showed no fight or backbone or anything in the last two games. Games where if you lose, you're out, and we've shown nothing. If the manager can't get you up for these kind of games, and I know some people say, but it's the players as well, but the manager is the guy who's manning that ship. And every time I see the guy on the sidelines, he looks dead. Every time I hear him in a post-match presser, he looks dead. I don't get what people see in Ange. I really don't. I really don't understand.
Come on to him. I promise you we're going to come on to him, Pat. But I think, just to be very, very clear, the two performances, Pat, you've seen over the course of the last week, cup competitions, I mean, disgusting, right, Pat? Disgraceful. You can't. Is there anything else you can say on the two cup competitions and the nature of those performances?
You can't legislate for it. Yes, we were unlucky. We've been drawn against two teams that are better than us. If we're being honest, Villa are better than us. Liverpool are better than us. But show some fight. Plymouth beat Liverpool today. So, you can beat, lesser teams can beat the other team if they play their all, put a shift in. And in both games, if we're being honest, we didn't really see anything to show that these guys really wanted it. A couple of players looked good, but as a team, as a collective, as a unit, we were miles off it.
Miles, let me come over to you, Pat. Thank you so much. I think, look, as we've said, it's been an absolutely terrible week for the football club. Two, I think, utterly embarrassing performances, however you want to dress them up, however you want to look at them. And, it's two performances where many look at the captains, the leaders of this football club. And I have to be honest with you, Pat, and Marlon as well. Miles, I'm really struggling to see a leader. I'm looking at someone like Heung-Min Son. Many look at Sonny as being, obviously, of course, the man that is seen as the face of the football club now since Harry Kane's departed. Look, I think it's fair to say Son doesn't maybe lead by what you would call being very vocal, but he leads by example. He leads by actions. I've not seen any actions when it comes to Heung-Min Son this week. And look, I can look at other players. I can look at Rodrigo Bentancur. I can look at certain other players in the camp that just I'm not happy with their performances. Basuma being another one. It's just absolutely, I think, just speechless, really, Miles. I'm out of words as to where I am with Tottenham right now. I know there's so many fans out there that are so disconnected right now that they don't recognise this football club and don't really know what it's becoming. But I don't know anything else other than to say that, look, I am going to personally be there at the protest for next week. I implore and I ask everyone else to follow suit if you're comfortable with doing that. Again, not everybody is comfortable with protesting, but those that want to see change, those that want to enforce change, I think we do need to come together as one. I mean, Miles, where are you right now on the nature of the fact we've gone out of two cup competitions in the space of 4 days? And it's the manner more than anything of the way we've gone out of those two cup competitions.
Ricky, I was just going to ask you to record everything I said after Leicester, because I could repeat exactly the same things, the same statements, everything. The Brentford game didn't change nothing for me. Never changed a thing. We played slightly different. It was all right. But what I got told after Liverpool, because me and Ash were doing the watch along, but what me and Ash got told was, it's Liverpool. They're the best team in the country. You have to kind of expect this result. And I was like, but it's more about the performance. But everyone's like, no, it's Liverpool. What did you expect? So when it came to Villa, we said, we're still going to lose. We're not going to do anything different. That first half was worse than anything that happened at Anfield, because it's not like we're going up against the same quality. We're going up, don't get me wrong, Villa were good, but they were missing Watkins. They had Marlon playing his first game, starting his first game. Yeah, Rodgers and all that. But this is not the quality that we were playing against Liverpool. And yet we still managed to not be able to pass the ball to each other. We managed not to put any fight. We were missing in tackles. The midfield was just open, so open. But the problem with the midfield being so open, that is something we have seen all season when we only have one man in the middle. And everything is just wrong. What is he saying to this team? Yes, after half-time, it was slightly better, but the game's already probably long gone. And then you have to put in a sense the thing of Kingsky making a mistake within the first minute. When this stuff like this is happening, you know it's not good behind closed doors. And at this present moment, I just really can't see where we're going from here. Like, everyone's feeling disillusioned, but where are Spurs going? The club have shown in the January transfer window exactly what where we are going, and it was kind of, we're not backing the manager. We don't really think there's an issue. So everything's just becoming everything's becoming an issue now going forward, and the football is just getting worse. That's the problem now. We're not even seeing our attacking football that we were promised. So what is the point now? There's just no point in anything. You just might as well just give it to anybody, because at the present moment the player's not playing for him. You've got the coaching staff. There's something obviously not going on there. The message is not getting across. Because if you can't get yourself up for a semi-final and you can't get yourself up for a cup game after a semi-final, I'm at a loss. I really don't. I've got no more to say on this. Yeah. This is going down to the players. This is going down to the coaches and staff. This is going down to the manager, and it's also going down to what's going on upstairs in the board level, because it's all pear-shaped, and I don't even know. I don't have the words anymore. This is the issue. I don't have the words. I am getting very numb to these losses, and I'm just kind of thinking, all right, I watched the game. I didn't even pay that much attention to it. I really didn't pay that much attention to it. As soon as we went 1-0 down, they didn't put any fight in. It was just all Villa coming at us, and I thought, you're 1-0 down straight away, and you still can't play. Come on.
It's just the first minute. I mean, how do we go from being absolutely smashed 4-0 in a semi-final to then the first minute, the way in which we're going to come on to the goals later in the show, but I can't understand how in the first minute of the game we're this far open for our watching audience. We're 1 minute 37 in. One ball. Look, there's so much to discuss in the show.
Tactics. You have to look at the tactics. And at the end of the day, yes, I can blame Levy for a certain amount, but them guys going out there and those tactics that are being played, it's not something that's new. This is something I've seen all season. So I have to look. I have to park that Levy stuff for a second and go, the last month or so has been awful. Awful. The only thing that was saving Ange before was we were still attacking, we were still scoring. The problem is now we're conceding more and we're scoring a lot less. And I think everything that is summed up right now, and I think Alan Shearer summed it up in the commentary, which Alan Shearer of all people, but when Sonny went and passed to Basuma, done. The club was done, because that is bread and butter for Sonny, and he thought that Basuma was a better option than him shooting. Come on. This is not football anymore. This is just watching 11 men go out there and kind of get on with it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I must just say, just for a second, and look, you're right in what you're saying there, Miles. There is definitely wider conversation that we need to have on this show. But Henry Winter, I think, did put it very apt when he was talking about kind of where a lot of Spurs fans are at the moment. He said, look, the late goal not enough, but Spurs' most loyal fans, they want Levy out. Their views have been coming over loud and clear. Postecoglou will be eventually the one that does make way. That's what clubs do. But the manager, he does pay the price for poor results and poor performances and lack of progress. But the problem for Spurs lies much, much deeper than that, than a stubborn, uninspiring manager who resembles a spectator on the touchline, who has horrendous injury problems to contend with, unlike maybe some other managers. But the problem does go in even further than that. You know, they have a very unpopular chairman who is detached from the fans. Levy has done some good things in regards to the stadium and the training ground, but has failed to address the central problem that predates him, and that is ensuring that the recruitment of a better squad in terms of players with a tougher mindset has simply just not been there. Spurs have nobody like a John McGinn, a battler who can play at 90 minutes at a real hard, fast, intense tempo. Now, there's a real captain. Heung-Min has been a fine player for Tottenham during his time at the football club, but he's fading and he's not a leader. And in difficult times like this, lads, it's Tottenham. Pretty, but not winners. Spurs have to change their mentality as much as their head coach and chairman. It's a problem of culture. And I think, again, is what a lot of Spurs fans feel right now, that's why there is still out there. Still, there are some out there that still believe if Ange Postecoglou is given the tools, then he could still be the right man for Tottenham. There are some that don't feel that. Let's be very, very clear. There are different camps as to where Tottenham fans do feel right now. But I have to say, I mean, you know, when you cast your mind back to 2019, and this is a scary, scary thought. This was doing the rounds on social media just to let everybody know out there that what is quite terrifying is when you go back to 2019, Tottenham are reaching a Champions League final and Aston Villa are taking on Derby in the Championship. I mean, if ever there was two parallels in terms of two clubs of where they are at and where they're going, and we're now watching Aston Villa also in the Champions League, it's a damning indictment of the decline of Tottenham over many, many years. And look, before I bring in where we are with regards to Ange Postecoglou in general, just to give you the match facts and stats from that Villa game out there, it did finish, of course, 2-1 to Villa. 16 shots of Villa to Spurs is 11, 7 shots of Villa to Spurs is 5, 34 touches in Spurs' box to Tottenham, 17 in Villa's. Spurs edging the interceptions, 13-8. Villa clearances, they had more than Tottenham, 18-12. Villa also recovering the ball more, 45-43. Kinski the busier out of the two goalkeepers, 5-4. Villa also edging possession 52% to 48. And that XG 2.28 to 1.14. We'll bring in the initial comments of Ange Postecoglou, who spoke to BBC after the game, in which Ange said that nothing really changes in regards to the rest of the season. We have a couple of weeks now where we don't have midweek games. This group has done I can't believe I'm reading this. This group has done an unbelievable job for 2.5 months. And look, can I just say before I read the rest of that out, I know we've got 9 players that are injured. I know at times it's been 11, 12, 13. How can you sit there and say...
I know. Does he even believe what he's saying?
We've done an unbelievable job. We've got out of 2 cups in the space of 4 days. We've scored 1 goal. We've scored 1 goal. We've conceded 6. And we've done an unbelievable job. I can't praise them enough. Playing twice a week since November. They did the great. They'll get their chance to rest now, finish the season strong.
Yeah, it was an incredible interview.
Europe is still very important to us. We're still in a great spot there. We hope to get some players back over the next 2 weeks. We'll get players back, which will help. With 11 first-team players out, take that out of any team for 1 game and they would struggle. We've been doing that for 2.5 months. The players are going out there and giving everything they can. It would be a lot better if they just had some help. That's that. Oh, I don't know what to say. Russ, I don't know what to say.
No. Look, you can go on.
Russ, where are you, Russ? Just to be very, very clear, where are you right now on Ange Postecoglou's future? Where are you now?
I just know in the way, as we all do as football fans, clubs in the end go manager gone, stats, data, keep going on about it, results, whatever you want to call it. You know, they don't care that there's been a lot of injuries because they become insular. And this is the problem, that a protest for change, all of us involved in that, and there will be thousands and thousands, is the animal that you're dealing with is Daniel Levy, a very, very astute businessman, a man who probably, in terms of the business that he runs and other businesses, doesn't really have a heart. He just wants to see the balance sheet. In his fairness, and you put up the stat, you know, showed us £304 million he supported Ange Postecoglou with. You know, the net spend over the last 4 or 5 years is either the 3rd or 4th biggest in the Premier League. It's recruitment. I've always banged on about it. You've got to get the right players. And part of the problem is for Ange that he doesn't have a squad of players that is as strong as it should be. If you get some of your, in inverted commas, top players injured, we've had our fair share. The people who come in are either inexperienced, but in my opinion, the kids have done pretty well, or the bench just isn't good enough. And so, we can go on about a rebuild and we are Tottenham. We shouldn't be losing this game. We shouldn't be losing that game. The reality is, for me, the squad is weak. So the manager has to deal with that. And that's where the manager earns his money, by coming up with a plan to get the results that a football club needs. And I do not believe for 1 minute in the Liverpool semi-final that Ange sent those players out to play in the way that they did. I would like to bet you that he said, I want you to press higher, I'll go on attack, just go for it. And I think the players collectively went, "Whoa, we're not going to do that," because
so they're not listening, Russ. So that you're admitting they're not listening.
Yes, I am saying that I think we're now, and I think you've only got to watch us play. You can see that they're not listening, or if they are listening, they don't understand what they're listening to. I mean, it is an absolute mess. And I'll say it again, and Henry Winter is absolutely right. Clubs fire managers, and they will fire Ange Postecoglou. Might not be tonight, might not be tomorrow, might not be when and if we go out the Europa League, might not be if we lose at home to Man United, because the atmosphere is toxic. The players can't cope with it. And the players who come back maybe aren't quite up to speed. There'll be all sorts of reasons that'll be thrown out. But he will be sacked by this football club sooner or later. I'm not Mystic Meg. I'm not Clinton Baptiste. I can't see into the future. Apart from that is how football works. And it won't be Daniel Levy that leaves the football club. He's got his feet firmly, and has had for 24 years, under the table, super glued. His feet underneath the boardroom table. He ain't going anywhere. And, I wish the protesters well. I largely agree with everything that they have to say. But the animal, and I'm using that not in a derogatory way to Mr. Levy, but he is a business animal. We know them from all sorts of businesses, in many different businesses all over the world. The top people make loads of money and they're ruthless. And he's been ruthless with managers. And the bizarre thing is that a lot of our managers have been sacked for coughing, really. And this one has been singularly awful. And they're sticking by him at the moment. I mean, I'm hearing the same as you, Rick, from within the club, that there is no plan.
There's no alternative. I think let's be very clear again, unless we hear otherwise. Spurs, just to be clear, as we understand, there's no interim lined up from Tottenham. No. There is no alternative manager at this stage. So what you have to ask yourself is whether you feel that Ryan Mason and Matty Wells combined would get more out of this squad right now than Ange Postecoglou between now and the end of the season, because there at the moment is, at the moment, I understand that there is no alternative out there. If I could just bring in some of Ange's presser comments, and we're going to come around to Pat as well. Ange just said after the game in his post-match presser that it's a disappointing result, cup competition. We wanted to progress. We didn't do that. We didn't get off to a great start. It doesn't help when you are playing away from home, especially at a place like Villa. You concede so early. It gives momentum, gets the crowd going. We were struggling to stay in the game. Having said that, we had a big chance to equalise, and it would have settled things down. Second half was even more. We got better control of it. We had to open up, which allowed some transition moments. I felt like we were controlling the game a lot better, and the second goal made it even more difficult for us. We kept fighting, got the goal we needed. It just wasn't enough in the end. Ange was asked, how disappointing and damaging is that for you? He said, it's not damaging for me. It's also disappointing for us in terms of our objectives, but for 2.5 months, this small group of players have given everything. In multiple competitions, I think they've been outstanding. We had 11 first-team players missing. We started with 4 teenagers, a 21-year-old goalkeeper, coming away to one of the best teams in the country away from home. After playing the best team in the country on Thursday night, after playing a Premier League game last Sunday, playing a Europa game before that, the same group of players, no rotation. And they've been doing this since the middle of November. I think they've given everything. And I've got so much respect and admiration for the players and how they've gone about it. We get a couple of weeks off now. We'll get some players back, which I think is great. And we will move on from this. Pat, your reaction
Rick,
to those comments,
Rick,
man.
Can I just say one thing, Rick? Sorry. Anyone who thinks Ryan Mason and Matty Wells could be the answer, I think a lot of people would say that they're part of the problem, the coaching setup behind Ange Postecoglou. Okay, so they've got to bear that in mind. And the other thing is, don't think that we're going to be cut adrift in many ways with potential new managers. There's lots of managers who would say, Spurs, big club, London, no one's managed to do it. I love a challenge. Okay, that's fair enough. But look, they gave him £300 million to spend. I could spend that money better and get better results. There will be managerial egos out there, abroad or in the UK, who will fancy the job. So we mustn't be sitting crestfallen and saying, well, no one really wants a job. I don't believe that is the case.
I just don't think, Russ, you're going to get the manager you want right now, which is why, again, that
would you trust him, Rick? Would you trust him to get the right manager?
No, well, it's the same people, no disrespect, that picked Ange Postecoglou. So how can you trust them?
Well,
and again, I'll make that point. I'll make that point. I will say this, and it might upset a few out there. I don't think everything is Ange Postecoglou's fault, but I think I've not seen, as I've said many, many occasions now, when I look at the course of his tenure, and yes, it's been decimated by injuries 2 seasons around there, just to be clear, I have not seen enough progression of individuals that gives me the confidence that this is going to get better even when the players come back. Because when the players came back in the second half of last season, you look at our results that weren't good enough. I mean, Pat, just to bring you in on there, Ange Postecoglou's thoughts, very much in defence of the players, will not see any criticism of them. He thinks they've given their everything. He still insists we're in a great position in Europe and we've got an opportunity to improve our league form. We are going to get these players back and there is still plenty to look forward to. How do you feel, Pat, when I read you those comments from Ange?
I feel disgusted. I mean, the only thing I can take from that is that fair play. He's not thrown the players under the bus. He's taken the flack and the bulk of the responsibility. But ultimately, so you should. It's your shit tactics that have got us here. It's your lack of basically putting players in the right position that have got us here. It's your lack of understanding and reading games from the beginning that have got us here. It's your one-dimensional flawed setup that makes us so easy to play against that have got us here. And yes, it's funny as well because obviously even I've had arguments amongst good friends of mine because they, like, when we played against Liverpool and we kind of low blocked it and we sat back and this and that, I had people saying this is what you wanted, this is what you wanted in the sense of he changed and we're still not good enough. But ultimately, if you're changing and it's such a random change just before a game, obviously the players don't understand and won't get what you're doing. And then I don't know, man. I think
the Everton game, Pat. I think the Everton game, I let him off that to some degree now, looking back, because the reality is he loses Dominic Solanke on the eve of it. He has 24 hours to think of a plan. Was the plan good enough? No. We get torn apart by Everton in the first half. You then look at the Wolves game. I think it was the Wolves game after that, or was it, forgive me, the Leicester game after that? There's been an element again trying to change. For me, whatever he's trying to do is not working.
Exactly.
And it goes back to the point, Nick, I just say what Russ said earlier for me. The biggest thing what Russ said earlier for me, he's asking the player to go out there and do a job. They're not listening. So when the players are no longer listening, how do we just carry on? If the player's no longer listening, where he comes out on the respective game after a semi-final in the biggest game in the club's history for the last 4 or 5 years, and they are not performing the way he wants, he's admitting the players aren't listening. What do we do right now? I mean, we are at an absolute crossroads as to what we do right now. Like I've said, there doesn't appear to be any sign. And what Russ says there, maybe there'll be someone in the summer, Russ, that fancies the gig of a more higher profile or credibility for Tottenham. But nobody in their right mind, in my opinion, is going to walk into the mess where Tottenham are right now. Why would you? Why would you give up what you've got, whether it's Iriola, whether it's Marco Silva, whether it's Thomas Frank? Why would you walk away from what you've got right now for any kind of money? Why would you walk into it right now? You wouldn't. You'd wait until the summer. You would wait until the summer. I think Spurs are in a situation now where maybe you're getting on the phone to Harry Redknapp and seeing if Harry would take it to the end of the season to try and get some form of a tune out the players. I don't know. I mean, I'm at a loss as to where we are, Marlon, coming over to you here. I really, really am. I mean, look, again, Ange in his presser was asked around the fact of if he feels he can get more out of these players, can there be more to come? He said, look, it's just unfortunate that we couldn't get a couple back during the previous week. We could have risked a couple, but what's the point in that? We'll get maybe 3-4 players back this week with a possibility of 1 or 2 in the week after that. More importantly, this group has got to get a rest. They can go a whole week without having to get up for another game. We got back from work 2 a.m., the early hours of Friday, so they can get some rest now that they desperately need. I don't know whether they do or not in relation to whether they deserve to be judged as a full squad. All I'm saying is if you take out a back four, of Vicario, Dragoshin, Romero, Van der Ven, Doggin. You add to that Maddison, Johnson, Solanke, Odegaard, Werner. Take them out of any team. You know, how do they perform? How did Liverpool go? You look at the fact they lost, again, in relation to the game against Plymouth, as we discussed upon earlier. I don't care about me, Ange says. People will judge me. But you can't judge this group of players on what's happened. They've given everything and the performances. Like I said, 2 18-year-olds, 1 19-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 21-year-old, a goalkeeper starting against one of the best teams in the country at home. They've had a week off. They didn't play Thursday night against Liverpool. We did. Same players of the same group. Not a change. You can't measure this group of players on that and their performance. It's too easy to be critical of them. I just have huge admiration and respect for them. We kind of knew this game was going to be the finishing line. What am I reading here? I mean, what am I reading here, Marlon? We kind of knew this game was going to be the finishing line, but they tried their hardest, and that is all you can ask.
He's not thinking straight. He's gone. He's in his head. He doesn't know what he's doing at the moment.
Hold on. I don't say, on Thursday, he suggested to us that the players haven't played the way he's wanted to. Was that first half any better?
No, but he knows that. He knows. At the end of the day,
I'm not trying to get away from the fact we have got 9 players out injured right now. Nobody can get away from that. We've got 9 players out injured, but this is not about the injuries. This is about trying to see some form of performance. I mean, these are the 2 biggest games of Spurs' season in the space of the last 4 days. What have we seen? What are we seeing?
Well, let's look at it like this. I bet you there's a lot of people that are still Ange in and still want him to be here that looked at Ten Hag's situation and went, no, he deserves to be sacked. He deserves to be this. He deserves to be that. But Ten Hag went through the same situation. He had all these injuries, but managed to still bring 2 cups. But he was terrible for United. Everyone will sit there and go, United were crap. Spurs are going through the same thing right now. But it's like, no, Ange has got to stay. Ange has got to stay. It's the board. It's this, that, and the other. But everyone can see when it's somebody else is going through the same issue that they'll go, no, he doesn't deserve to be here. So I don't really get why people are going that Ange, yeah, he's got all these injuries, but when it's other managers that go through these injuries, no one bats an eyelid. Everyone's like, no. There's a reason why Richie Wellens used them as an example the other week for Leyton Orient. Everyone is seeing, every manager can see he's using excuses now. He's like, I get the Vicario, Van der Ven and Romero situation. However, the players that he's had at his disposal should be doing a lot better than he's getting out of them. I don't care what anyone says.
It's just the performances, Miles. For me, look, take everything aside, you know, if we were losing these games, right, but we were losing them on the nature of just a wonderful goal or a worldy goal, I can accept that. I think
you can get away with it.
What I can't accept is being outplayed, outfought, a lack of desire, a lack of commitment, a lack of courage, a lack of belief. I'm not see. This is not the Tottenham. Whatever you want to sit there and say out there for rival fans that may laugh at us, might banter us, whatever you say about Tottenham, I think there still needs to be a degree of understanding that there should be some certain standards here. And to come out and suggest that we should feel sorry or be sympathetic for the players, I'm sorry. I can't do that. I can't do that. Yes, you know, every 2 or 3 days it's tough. I get that from a training perspective, but these players are being well looked after. They're in, bless them, the most beautiful places to work. And, you know, they're idolised by supporters. You know, I can take losing. I'm a Spurs fan. We can all take losing. We're used to losing. What I can't take, for me, is the nature of the performances that we are seeing, and then to be told afterwards, these are good enough. I simply can't accept or take that. And he said, look, I'm not talking about me. People can judge me. They can say I've done a good job. They can say I've done a bad job. I'm not up to it, whatever, that's fine. What I'm saying is you can't be critical of players' performances at this time, because if you do, then you do that with everyone else. Because, you know, we've got 9, 10, 11 players out. None of them can play every week. And that's not just for one game. I'm not just saying we had to do this today. We've been doing it since the middle of November, and you can't judge performances of these players and critique them on what they've done. All they've done is given their all, and that's all you can ask. For me, that's of no interest to me. My responsibility at this football club is this group of players and this team to get them playing in a manner I want them to and to bring us success. Whether people think I can do that or not, that's for others to judge. But there's got to be a better appreciation for what I see is a very small group of players that have been doing everything over the last 2.5 months. It can't be that people just think it's an excuse. That's just not anywhere near close to objective analysis. That is just agenda-driven stuff. If it's to get rid of me, that's fine. Good on ya. Go for it a million times. I can't remember what I'm reading here. But in terms of this group of players, whether they've given over or what they've given over the past 2 months, it's a credit to them. I can't speak about them highly enough. Do you know what? I feel like I'm reading someone else's presser notes here. I can't believe I'm reading a manager that has seen his side go out of 2 cup competitions in the space of 4 days in the nature, in the way they've gone out. And look, you know what? I don't know if people know or listen to last one, but everybody that watch me, I would say I'm a fairly moderate fan that can normally see the positive in the negative. I'm sorry. I have to say this. I honestly don't know what he's talking about.
No.
I actually don't know what he's talking about. I don't know what to say. Russ, I mean...
He's out of his depth, man. He's out of his depth.
Yeah.
Russ, just be clear, where we are right now,
Yes.
would you sack him now, Russ, and put in charge Ryan Mason and Matty Wells? Do you think we'll get anything more out of this?
Very quickly, if all these players have been playing brilliantly, banging in the goals, getting over the line, winning games, he'd be the first one standing there saying, I'm so proud of these players. They're unbelievable what these young lads are doing. And, you know, this is what the football club's all about, rah, rah, rah. But because the results are not going anywhere near as well as he would like, then he comes out with what you've just read. Would I put Ryan and Matty in charge of the team? It's not up to me. I'm just a fan. But if you want to put me in that position, no, I personally wouldn't, because I believe that there would be better options out there still, despite everything that's gone on in the ENIC regime at Spurs. But I think it's a fair point you make, Rick, and Pat as well, and Miles, that to get somebody in at this stage in the season is very, very difficult. What I would say is, what serious football club doesn't have a plan B? Manchester United obviously did, for example, didn't they? When Ten Hag was, is he going, isn't he going? A bit like Ange, they had a plan, right? Under Ineos, they had a plan. This is ENIC, who've run our club for 24 years, supposedly know football inside out and how it works, but they haven't got a plan B. If that is the case, they could supply it. Excuse me, they could, surprise us and say, well, Ange has gone and so-and-so and so-and-so's coming in. And they might have a plan B, but I don't think they have. So, do we stick with him? I personally wouldn't. I think the data is so bad, and I've seen enough of him and I've heard enough of him that I've had enough. And it's taken me an awful long while, Rick, to get to this point with Ange Postecoglou. Nobody more than me and you, the viewer or listener, wanted this bloke to be more successful. We were all on the same page, but it is, as Pat said, it isn't working. It isn't going to work long term. So now it's about staying in the Premier League, and that is an issue, and trying to win the Europa League, which, frankly, is a pipe dream.
Do you think, Russ, to come back on your point there, do you think Ryan Mason and Matty Wells are going to get more out of this team and squad than Ange Postecoglou?
Well, they're part of the coaching team. Their job is to get more out of them. And they're not, unless they are completely overruled in coaching and decisions. And they're told to, Ryan, you've done it before. It doesn't matter. We're going to do it my way. That could be going on, in which case there may be a case for it. But all I'm seeing is, and this afternoon, second half, the camera panned on Ange, all the coaches, all the support staff, and it was like looking at a picture at a funeral. There is no love for the game. There is no joy in these people.
Yeah, no one's enjoying it right now. And Ange isn't enjoying it. And Ange isn't enjoying it either.
But there's a reason why it's all going horribly wrong, Rick. And it has been for a long, 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 long while.
Look, Ange was asked what he's going to do with his 3 midweeks and what the players are going to do. He said, look, I'm just going to keep on working like I have done over the course of the last number of months. The ones who have been playing, we've got to give them some time off. We've got to give the early part of the week, and then we'll give them some time off as well. The boys who are coming back, we'll give them the opportunity to give them a whole week of training, which is great. So come Tuesday, we should have 3 or 4 who've been missing. We can give a full week to, and instead give them a couple of training sessions rather than throwing them in. By the time we get them back at the end of the week, we should have something resembling a squad of players to prepare for a big game. Then what falls into that the following week, we've got 7 days and no midweek game to prepare for the next game. So that gives us a real good opportunity to get some work into these guys who've been for quite a while missing and needing some regular game time. So by that point, we've got obviously an opportunity to get back into the Europe and having some midweek games, and we'll be in much better shape. A question that's posed to Ange is that even with the injuries, is it a worry for you that the team doesn't look like an Ange Postecoglou team right now? Ange puts his hands to his face and said, look, I don't know how else to explain it. I don't know how else to explain it if you can't see that this team is trying to play under its hardest circumstances in the most extreme of conditions. 2.5 months of asking 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, senior players, no rest to play Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Thursday, Sunday. I'll keep going for 2.5 months. And if you don't think it's not a factor at all of how this team is performing, then there's nothing else to say. There's nothing else that I can explain. They're tired, mate. Do you not think they can press if they wanted to? If we hadn't played Thursday, if I hadn't rotated the team, would have been a fair chance of maybe winning here. Unless you're superhuman, if you think no. After playing Liverpool on Thursday night, they should be flying. Is that what you think? They're human beings. Why do you think Liverpool and others rotate 11s? Why? There's a reason why I wish I could do the same, so you can bring a freshness to the team. Of course, they're not playing anywhere near the levels that we want or expect, but that's not because they're not trying. It's because they can't. I think the group of players we get in terms of the rest of the group that come back will be an outstanding team. I have no doubt about that. Whether other people can see that or not, that's of no interest to me. If you want to measure anything on whether what we're doing right now, other than the extreme situation we're dealing in, then I think your analysis is skewed and it's not objected. And that is my opinion. Marlon, let me bring you in. It's a fiery presser. It's one that I think very much kind of shines a light on the lack of options he has right now. Many would argue that that press conference really does, once again, home in on the board and the lack of work done over the course of the January window and the summer window. What does your gut say now, Miles, in terms of what's left in terms of his tenure at Tottenham? Can you see him continuing, or do you feel Tottenham will make a change?
Well, if there's no plan B, they're not going to make a change, are they? And look, at the end of the day, he should be gone tomorrow. After the last 2 games, he should be gone tomorrow. I saw Jermaine Defoe talking more sense in the studio today than anything I've seen all season from Ange and the way he's been coaching. Look, at the end of the day, Spurs are just in this predicament where, look, a lot of managers have come here, failed, and gone on to do better things. And I've always said this, Ange will go somewhere else and will become a better manager elsewhere. Tottenham is just not the club for him. I think,
Marlon, the job, unfortunately, the job, in my opinion, is no longer the job that Ange can succeed in. That's just my opinion. The way the job has materialised over the course of these last months.
Look, you look at Conte's rant. You could pinpoint today, put it in the exact same position, play it, and to ask people who'd never seen it before, when was this put? And they'll probably go, what, last week? Because everything is still the same. It does not change. Things will always stay the same. And unfortunately, look, there are other managers out there, no matter if we want them or not. There are defensive managers out there. There are some attacking managers out there who could probably come in and do a job. Like, there are managers out there that haven't got a job that Spurs could go and get. The problem is that you won't be able to appease the fans because, say, let's take Allegri for talking purposes right now. He goes against everything that they've been building for the last 18 months. But could he come in and probably do a good job? Probably, because he'd probably get them defensively sound and probably conceding less goals, and it'd be that boring crap football. So people now have to make a choice. Is it about results or is it about the way we play? It's just, there's a lot of factors to play into this. And for me, if Spurs had done their research when Ange was at Celtic, they would have known that this is nothing new. If anyone had watched Celtic when he was there, all of this, what we're seeing now, is the exact same things that used to happen when Celtic came up against decent teams, especially in the Champions League.
Marlon, you sound like me. You sound like me in the summer when I said it, and everyone jumped on me and said this and that. I said, just watch them in the Champions League, and you would have saw exactly the same Postecoglou shit we've been seeing, and no one wanted to hear it.
But I gave him the chance. I said, look, he's at the end of the day, he was playing attacking football, but our defense, we were shaky. But if I said to everyone next season, are Spurs going to get injuries? You're all going to tell me yes, because the last 2 seasons have shown me that we're going to get injuries. So why in the world am I going to then trust Ange to go through another set of injuries in the 3rd season as well? Because that's exactly what's going to happen. We can guarantee that's going to happen. Van der Ven's been out twice. Romero's been out twice. Maddison can't keep fit. This is the same players that were injured last year. Bukayo, don't get me wrong, is just pure unlucky. It's just one of them things that happen. But your doggy got injured last year. Your doggy's injured again. So for me, yes, the summer transfer window was bad, but Ange hasn't learned from last season when it was all going wrong then. Because everyone was saying last year when the players come back from injury, watch, fortunes would change. They never changed. They actually got worse. The same problems might happen when all these players come back again. We just don't know. They'll be up. The results will just go win, loss, win, loss. That's all that will change. So the loss, 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 loss. That's not where this club needs to be. This club needs to be challenging at least for Europe. And that's not what's happening right now.
I just want to be clear on this. I mean, Russ, you've said for you, just to be very clear, if it was you making that decision tonight, Russ, just to let you come back on that point there, you would let Ange Postecoglou go. And if the only alternative options, not put words in your mouth here, would be Ryan Mason and Matty Wells in the season. Just to be clear, Russ, is that you telling me that's what you would do, Russ, to be very, very clear? If that is the only option you can make right now, let's bring you off mute, Russ. You're muted there. Come off mute for me. Explain your point for me on that. Is that what you would do?
No, never said that.
Right. Please clarify for me.
If I was running the club, I would have had a plan B, because I would have known enough about football and the people around me that things probably were going to get worse. You'd hope against hope that they didn't, but I would have a plan B. It's the same in whatever industry you're in. You've got a wonderful general manager. What happens if they get poached? You should have a plan B. And I would have had a plan B. But look, I'm just a fan. I'm not running the football club. I think it's pretty obvious that you have a plan B. So I wouldn't turn to Ryan and Matty. No.
So you think Ange in charge for the rest of the season? Would you let Ange remain the rest of the season? Because that seems to be the only option here. I wish I could throw you other options.
I wouldn't, because if it was down to me, I'd have had a plan B, another manager lined up, and he would be gone pretty much probably tonight or tomorrow, because I would have heard that press conference once again. As an owner of a football club, I'm trying to, a chairman, I'm trying to put myself in their position. Here he goes again, blaming me. Well, I've given him over 300 million quid. How dare he allude that it's my problem and the club's problem? That's how I would be thinking if I was the chairman. But I would have had a plan B, and I'd have called him in and I would have said, it isn't working. Being out of 2 cup competitions in pretty humiliating style in 4 days, forming the Premier League. It's grim. I can see that the players are not playing for you, or that they're making up their minds what they want to do. Your tactics, if they follow them, we seem to be far more vulnerable and conceding goals. We're falling like a stone. These are all the things I would have said. Oh, and by the way, there's your payoff money, because football rewards failure. As we all know, it's a great job to be in. So I would have had a plan B, Rick. That is my honest answer. What do I think they'll do? I think they'll stick with him. And I find it baffling, quite baffling. And it's not my job to work out if
I get that.
They stick with him. I understand you're asking for my opinion, but actually I'm a fan. I'm watching this S show like everyone else. And I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do. But, you've pushed me. I wouldn't have Ryan and Matty running the team, but I also wouldn't have Ange Postecoglou in charge for any.
We've just got Russ muted there.
Sorry, that was me. Yeah, you've got me. But what I would have had was a plan B. And I really would have had a plan B. And it happens in my industry, the broadcasting industry. Somebody, doing the breakfast show, they're on cloud 9, getting big ratings, a couple of dodgy ratings books. And they're sitting down having lunch with somebody else. And all of a sudden you get a knock on the door, come in and see us. Oh, you're finished. Fred Bloggs takes over next week. It's no different in football or any other industry. Clever canny operators always have a plan B?
Yeah. I mean, look, just to be clear where I'm at right now, do I think there's going to be much improvement between now and the end of the season? No. Do I think Ryan Mason and Matty Wells will get anything more out of the squad than Ange's? No. I think, as I've said in the last couple of shows, just to be very, very clear, I would ride us out to the end of the season. And then, honestly, I don't know what to do. I think we try and battle on to the rest of the season, not because I want Ange Postecoglou to stay. I think I've gone past that point, but I just don't think that Ryan Mason and Matty Wells gets us any further to progression up the league and to pushing on for the Europa League than Ange Postecoglou does, to be honest with you. And I just don't think there's an alternative right now, which is really hard to even come to terms with. I mean, Miles,
just add to that. Look, just quickly wanted to add to that. So Spurs have said recently, there's always been this talk that we're meant to be following the Brentford and Brighton model, which I've always said is a bit stupid because, yes, we can follow the data model, but we should be aiming higher than those teams. But let's take Brighton for a second. Brighton know after Hertzler who's coming in, and he's in a job. They knew after De Zerbi, they knew after Potter. They literally have their managers lined up, ready to go. Why Spurs, if they're looking at all the data, not doing the exact same thing? Because say Ange was successful and he left tomorrow, or he's going to be terrible, you should have the next manager lined up, no matter if he's in a job or not. And this says to you, when you go, there's no plan B, this just sums up the whole club and the way it's being run. And this is the biggest issue. And it doesn't even have to be Ryan Mason, right? We have an under-21s coach or 23s, whatever you call it, Wayne Burnett. I think I said this the other day. He could take over. Let's see if he can do something different and coach them. Because the under-23s, when you watch them play, seem to be coached. They play slightly better. So there is that option. But at the end of the day, the fact that we haven't got a plan B in the manager section, there is not a list, that just sums everything up. And this is why you have to go to why these protests are now important, because they've gone data. But if I gave you data on Solanke, right, and gave it to all of us at the beginning of the season, and I gave you data on Ivan Toney, I bet we'd all come out with different answers to say who we wanted, because data's all good. And don't get me wrong, because I work in data, but it depends on who's interpreting that data when it comes to you. And this seems to be the issue at the moment. The data's being given to people, and it's just not being interpreted in the way that it should be. And this is why it's all going wrong, because maybe Lange isn't the answer. This is why Villa kind of got rid of him. You know, you just look at it, you look at everyone else, Mun, who's to say these people are any decent? It always seems to be Levy doesn't employ the right people, or did Lange do his job in January? And the same problem that every single director of football has always pinpointed at, Levy's gone, nah, that's too expensive, that's too this, that's too that. And I bet you any money when Lange quits, it's going to be the exact same issue, because what's his name? The guy that was before Lange, Steve Hitchen. He's come out recently and said he had all these players lined up, but guess who stopped him? So we're all sitting there blaming Lange and Munn, but they could be doing their job. And we know what the common denominator is right now in this whole thing. And I think this could be an issue.
This is why I think some Spurs fans come over to you, Pat. There are still some that are still split as to whether letting Ange Postecoglou go is the right thing. And look, I just will put this out there again to try and balance the show. Look, we know right now that Spurs they've got 9 players unavailable. And I think just to again put this out there for those that are unaware of this, that Tottenham, when they've had 5 injuries or less to outfield players under Ange, in terms of that judging of a spell, they've played 44, they've won 24, they've drawn 5, they've lost 15. It's a 55% win percentage. It's 1.75 points per game, which averages 67 points across 38 games. That would roughly get you around 5th. That's a rough kind of indication of around 5th. And I think that's why there are still some fans out there that maybe feel that Ange Postecoglou is the right man if he's actually given the tools to do his job. And I just think in response to that, I don't think Tottenham are ever going to buy Ange Postecoglou the specific kind of players that Ange Postecoglou needs to be able to succeed at Tottenham. And this might upset a few when I say this. I don't think Ange Postecoglou is a terrible, terrible manager. I think he works at certain football clubs that are willing to give him the tools that he wants. The problem is Tottenham will never give Ange Postecoglou as a whole the tools that he needs. The same way they weren't going to give Jose Mourinho the tools that he needs. The same way they weren't willing to give Antonio Conte the tools that he needs. The same way Mauricio Pochettino wasn't given the tools that he required at a time of backing to really push the club on. And I will just mention this point, Miles. I'll just come back over to you that there was particularly some chance actually during that Aston Villa game for the return of return of Mauricio Pochettino by some sections of the Spurs fan base. This is the manager that has, of course, since leaving Tottenham, gone to PSG, won a couple of trophies. He then made that move over to Chelsea. Didn't particularly do pretty well over there. You know, again, he had actually a magnitude of injuries that he had to face over there. Many would argue that did he really dent and taint his tenure at Tottenham so bad by the fact that he went to Chelsea and didn't really achieve anything and left after one season? I mean, what's your take on that for you, Marlon? If there was a case of trying to bring Pochettino back, do you feel enough has changed? Do you think going back to Pochettino would be the right option at this point, Marlon?
At the present moment, I would. However, I don't think it's going to happen. I know everyone's saw the pictures of Ozzy Ardiles the other day with Poch, and it just brought back so many good memories. But unfortunately, I think there are still people at the club that Poch won't work with. I think Poch will turn us down. As a fan base, I think all of us would welcome him back with open arms.
I'm not sure about that, Mars. I have to disagree with you on that. I just look at the fact of what we're seeing right now with regards to isn't it a little bit, I would say, what's the right word I'm looking for? Coincidental. A day after Tottenham crash out of the League Cup in the manner they do, and suddenly you've got Pochettino on social media with Ozzy Ardiles. I just find that too close to home.
But he's done this before, and look, we had the whole summer where he was meant to come back and he didn't, and he was waiting for the phone call and whatnot. Spurs are not going to make that phone call. They're not. They will not make that phone call. This is just I don't know what I don't know what Ozzy and the old guard are trying to do. They're probably trying to. This is their way of subtly saying that Levy's got it wrong, but they can't say it in the sense of because half of them are employed by the club. So this is probably their subtle way. But you got to remember, he's in a contract with USA.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go anywhere this summer at the moment. I'd be surprised.
But I think the whole thing is so difficult to even bring Poch back that I want it. Look, I want it. I would love it. I've said the only person who's going to work on it after seeing what he did at Chelsea, that second half of the season, I was like, Poch will still come in and do a half decent job at Spurs. But at the end of the day, I just think, it's all coincidental, but I think it's because of what's happened this week, why they've, like the legends have done this. They've gone, this is what you had, and you've messed it up. And now we're just stuck. And the fact that we're all turning against the board and everything like that, I get what you're saying, but I just can't see how Poch, he won't break his USA contract. It's just a case of here, just basically we've messed up. I just can't see it. Like, I believe him and Cullen fell out, and that's the big reason why he won't come back.
I'm going to go to Russ Williams, but Pat, just to bring in on that point of Mauricio Pochettino, there will be some that can't forgive him for that move to Chelsea. There'll be some that can forgive him. There'll be some that maybe feel, as we discussed earlier, Pat, that he was not afforded the time and the money to be able to rebuild the squad, that he made it very, very clear 6 months before his departure, needed new furniture, needed reinvestment and didn't get it. Pat, in your mind, can you see a world in which Pochettino comes back to Tottenham under Daniel Levy? I probably couldn't. I think for me, the only way Pochettino probably returns to the club is maybe once the club has had some investment and there's maybe a change at the top in terms of ownership. I think the ownership maybe look at the fact of anybody new coming in would maybe feel right. Maybe Maurizio's the man we turn to. But again, we have to bring that point into it, as Marlon said there. He has got a contract with the US. I don't think he's going to break that, even though he's got still a love for Tottenham, in my opinion. Do you think this is a non-story, Pat?
It's hard to say, man. You know what? Like, obviously, when Poch took the Chelsea job, I came out on social media and called him a snake, said I'd never forgive him. I was so pissed off that of all the clubs he went to Chelsea. But obviously, that was a while ago. And looking at our situation now and how dire it is and how bad it is, I'd love to have him back because he actually got the fans. He actually improved players. We actually had a style of play. He also didn't negate his defensive issues or responsibilities. Like, he was a balanced manager. And all I want is a bit of balance. You don't have to go gung-ho and be super attacking or be super defensive and negative. Poch was in the middle, and we played good football, scored a lot of goals, had the best defensive record in the league. He obviously failed in the cup finals, wasn't backed. I mean, we went transfer windows without being backed. So there's loads of things that I love about Poch. There's a few things I didn't like near to the end before the Champions League final. Let's have it right. He was kind of flirting with the idea of possibly going to United, had a meeting with Sir Alex Ferguson and a sit-down meal. And he was kind of saying that, oh, if I win, I might step away. I didn't like that because I was like, you got a final to concentrate on. And obviously you're talking about the future and leaving. And then obviously he made a big mistake starting Harry Kane in the final over Lucas Moura, who had just scored a second half hat-trick. So Poch isn't perfect, playing Son at wing back, as we discussed earlier in the group chat, in the semi-final against Chelsea. He's made his mistakes, but all in all, he's a quality manager. And even the craziness at Chelsea, and he managed to get them fifth. They only finished 2 points behind us, and they had a mental start to the season. So with all that being said, Poch is still a quality manager. He's way better than Ange, way better. Like, it's chalk and cheese. Let's have it right. But with everything going on and how he left and how Levy did him dirty, it's a hard one to say, but I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. Poch has come out a number of times and said he would still love to come back and win as a trophy.
Is there in your mind, Pat, is there unfinished business there? Is there
yeah,
unfinished
100%.
business?
I mean, even the sit down in the pub, literally, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, see sitting down with Glenn Hoddle, Ozzy Ardiles, he's flirting and saying stuff. It's like he's putting the feelers out. And obviously the timing is so crucial to that. We had just crashed out of a cup. The morale and mood is low, and you see Poch saying these things, and obviously fans picking up on it. So there's definitely something there. But like Marlon said, and like Russ said, he's got a contract with the US, and I don't know how feasible it is. But I'll take Poch in a heartbeat after the way the season's gone. And yeah, I don't know. The thing is, it's just Daniel Levy, isn't it? And it's just hard. Like, any decent manager worth their salt is going to look at it and say, is Levy going to give me what I need to really make the club successful? And obviously, ultimately, it kind of falls down where it's probably not. But Ange has been back to a degree. I get it. You know what? It's really tricky with the Ange thing, because I know some people won't agree with this, but I look at this injury situation and I blame a lot of it on him. Because when we had a full complement of players, he refused to play certain players. Like Jed Spence was only played once he had to play him. And look how good Jed Spence is. How could he not get a look in? And again, that's because Ange was playing the same players week in and week out, week in and week out. And only because so he's saying all the injuries, the this, to that. The ill-advised moment of rushing back Mickey van der Ven and Romero for the Chelsea game, and then they were both out for months after that. That's the manager's call. He made that call to play them. And there's just so many things where I'm looking at it and I'm like, you're flogging these players to death. You're overusing certain players. So the injuries, yes, it's crazy and it's bad that's happened, but you are also part of that problem.
Can I just start on this point with regards to the reason why I've raised the Pochettino to Tottenham, whatever you want to call that, is because there were murmurings from the away fans during that Villa game that there were calls for Maurizio Pochettino. They were singing his name. So just to be very, very clear, the reason why this has become a talking point or a discussion for those that are confused as to why I've brought in the name Maurizio Pochettino back to the debate is purely by the fact that the away fans were singing for his name. And I feel the away fans are a massive, massive part of the football club. They go home and away. They travel all around the world. And it would be unfair, I think, to not even mention the fact that if the away fans are singing for a specific man or a specific coach, I think it'd be wrong of me to just ignore that and not bring it to the show. And a lot of our loyal away fans listen and watch Last Word on Spurs, and it may be back if I didn't bring it up. I mean, just to bring this back to the point here, Russ, look, let's not get away from it. You know, Maurizio Pochettino didn't win anything during his time at Tottenham. He got very, very close, but he didn't win. You know, it would be a pretty much, how do I put this? As Pat has said there, you know, it'd be an admitting failure from the board that if they were to bring Pochettino back, they should have maybe given him the time in the first place and not sacked him at the time that they did. So where are you, Russ, on any potential calls for Maurizio to return? And I have to be very, very clear on the fact that he does have a contract in place with the US. And as Marlon says there, I don't think he'll break that contract. So I just find it very interesting a day after Tottenham crash out of a cup exit, the way they did 4-0, suddenly the images are Maurizio holding a Spurs flag that he's signing in a London restaurant close by to the training ground with Aussie Ardealies. And again, word on the street, if you want to believe the word on the street, a lot of the ex-Spurs players that are around Aussie, I'm not saying Aussie said it, is that they're working on him. What do you take away from that, Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I read that. I think it was Aussie who said it. I think there is a little bit of rose-tinted glasses with Maurizio Pochettino, no doubt. First 2-3 seasons, we could see massive improvements. And we know where we got to with him, and we so nearly could have won the Premier League in an extraordinary season where Leicester managed to do it somehow. It was almost like we were up against unnatural forces in that sort of two-horse race, and we came second. Champions League final, and then he wasn't backed, and I think that made him think differently about the club. And I thought it was a really good point that Miles made, or was it Pat? It was one of you guys, about having a meal with Sir Alex Ferguson, flirting with United, inappropriate timing. That's the sort of stuff that I'm sure Daniel Levy and the board frown upon. But if I was him, I would honestly, I just don't think in life you go back. I really don't. And I think the only way he could go back, as I think you mentioned, Rick, is if a new regime came in and had a completely different agenda on how they were going to run the football team, funds-wise, what they were expecting. And I don't think, even in a moment of abject panic, which I don't believe he has, I don't think Daniel Levy would make the phone call. I think Marlon is exactly right with that. So I think it's a bit of a non-starter, and I suspect there's a bit of friction between Maurizio and Daniel Levy, and he knows that the club are going through a very, very difficult time. And hey, let's just be a bit cheeky and sign a Spurs flag and have lunch with a few of the ex-players. And, you know, there might be a bit of unfinished business that isn't particularly pleasant business between the owners and Maurizio Pochettino, and he's just seeing it as a bit of mischief. It could be the answer. I mean, America are hosting the World Cup, aren't they? And he's the manager of the United States. He's not absolutely not going to walk away. No chance.
There's no way to walk away
from
that gig.
Football, you never know.
Yeah, I mean, football, you never know. Look, I think there's no doubt. Look, whatever people want to think or say or whatever, I don't think there's any doubt he loves Tottenham. And I can tell you, again, it sounds wrong saying, I can tell you. Like, all I will say to you is that I know 1 billion, trillion percent he wanted to come back to Tottenham. He was waiting on that phone call for the majority of the summer where Tottenham appointed Ange Postecoglou. And whatever you think, whether you're for or against him, all I would say to you is that man got Tottenham. And maybe you would argue that he didn't get Tottenham by joining Chelsea. I get that. But look, at the end of the day, Tottenham did not pick up the phone to Maurizio Pochettino. You know, they made it clear, I think, to him that they weren't going to pick up the phone. And that's why he went to go to Chelsea. He wanted to go to Tottenham. And he would argue that you shouldn't ever have done that in the first place. But at the end of the day, I don't think he did anything there that really, really, grated on me too much. He beat us twice. He beat Ange twice. So, look, I mean, what does that tell you? I don't know. Just to finish where we are right now on this point, and I've got to say, there's over 2.5, well, we've got over 14,000 of you watching the show live. I want to say, if you guys can, if you can hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this to a worldwide Spurs audience, we greatly appreciate that. Just to come close on this debate, I want to ask a very simple question to you all, a yes or a no. I'll go to Marlon if I can first. Marlon, will Ange Postecoglou be the Spurs manager at the end of the season, yes or no?
Yes.
Pat, will Ange Postecoglou still be here come the end of Spurs this season?
Yeah, he will. They're banking on the Europa League now. And I think just to save face, because if they sack him, they have to admit they've made yet another mistake. So they're going to give him as much time as they possibly can for him to turn things around. Obviously, if he wins the Europa League, which is a massive pipe dream, like Russ said, but if he wins that, that's Champions League qualification and it's a trophy, something that we haven't done in however long. And obviously he'll turn around and say, see, I got it right. So he's banking, it's all chips in there and hoping we win it. I mean, for all of our sakes, I hope we do, because it would be amazing, like especially the way the season's gone. But if we're being realistic, and every single person in this chat and watching right now, none of us really believe that. But that's what they're banking on. They can't admit they've made another mistake. If Daniel Levy sacks Ange right now, where does he go? Who does he turn to? Who does he hide behind? So that's why I think he'll keep him in.
And
Pat, if he wins the Europa League, I literally want Ange to swear at all our supporters and go,
I'll take it. I would eat humble pie for the rest of my life, because if he done that, that would be insane. But
can you imagine that? Can you imagine bringing that Europa League back on the bus tour with all the Spurs fans? They might throw him overboard. I don't know what that would be like. Poor Ange, they throw him overboard. I don't know what they do to him. Look, there'll be an element where, and this is, I mean, that could be a different show. What do you do if he does win the Europa League? You can't sack him then. You can't sack him then. He's been the most successful manager in the last 17 years. Russ, let me come to you at that point. I mean, Russ, will he be at the end of the season? Yes or no, Ange Postecoglou?
That'd be great winning the Europa League. We'd all love that, and a lot would be forgiven across the board, but maybe not with the owners. I think it's got nothing to do with the Europa League. I think if we lose, say, our next two Premier League games, and we're sitting 16th, 17th in the Premier League, I don't think he'll survive that. No.
And do you think, just to come back on that point, then there will be an alternative plan to Mason and Wells then, if that's the case? Or do you think that would be seeing those two gentlemen to the end of the season? I'm sorry to keep going back on that point with you. What do you see happening if they were to sack him?
Are they two people who could keep us from getting relegated if things got that bad? I'm not so sure. I don't think they've got a plan B, but I don't know. And maybe they have a plan B for somebody to come in who's experienced, who can firefight. You know, I just think the Premier League dictates whether he stays. And so that's all I can say, really. But lose, for example, at home to United, you lose the next one. I mean, it's impossible, really, when you're flirting with relegation and everything that Tottenham want, the filthy lucre, you know, to support the entertainment business. It would be unpalatable.
I think they're lucky, Tottenham, and I think I said on a couple of shows. I think Spurs are lucky that because their league position, or dare I say, the teams below them. I don't think Tottenham are going to get relegated. You know, I look at the three teams in the relegation zone right now. We've got a 10-point cushion on Leicester that are currently, in the bottom three. I mean, we've got to play Ipswich obviously in a week or so's time. Southampton. I mean, look, Spurs need to win a couple more games, and I think they're in a situation where they would be safe. Look, there's no guarantee Tottenham will, there's no guarantee Spurs are going to win 3 or 4, but at the same time, I think, I don't think they'll get relegated. I think the situation they're in right now is, can they just ride it out to the end of the season and get into a position where they can analyse what is out there? Because I will make that point, as I've said during this show, for as much as I don't think Ange Postecoglou is the right man for Spurs' long-term future, I don't really feel there's going to be any real uplift or uptake of Mason and Wells taking it over because, as you guys have said, it's simply the same voice of the same people that have been part of the same problem that have failed over the course of the last 3-4 seasons. So unless you're going to have a whole clean sweep of the backroom staff and you're bringing in an interim with maybe somebody else that is a fresh new voice in there, I don't really see a massive, massive change in the players in terms of their mentality. So I don't know. There's a lot of questions to be answered. And it all does go back, once again, I have to say, to the very, very top. And again, we will reiterate that point. There is a protest taking place. This will be for, of course, next week. This is for next Sunday, the 16th of February, ahead of the Manchester United game. This is an opportunity for every single Tottenham fan out there, international fans all around the world, to come together as one and to really emphasise the point that we all would like to see a change in the ownership, a change at the football club that gives us the opportunity, we feel, to try and just get some of our standards back that we are drastically losing week upon week here. I want to say a massive thank you to our wonderful audience. We've got over 15,500 of you watching the show live. Thanks so much, as always, for incredible support. I'm joined by Russ Williams. I'm joined by Patrick Tyrant. I'm joined by Marlon over at the Spurs Kings. As always, we're delighted to be sponsored by our wonderful partners over at NordVPN. They've supported us over the last 4 or 5 years. They're great for those that take some holidays around the world, vacations, want cheaper flights, cheaper different things, whether it's movies, being able to watch them in different places. Please check them out, nordvpn.com/LWON. Right. We're going to fly through the game, you'll be pleased to know, because I think for everybody out there right now, to watch it was enough. To go and relive it is another thing. When we look at the game itself and how it panned out for Tottenham in terms of the team, look, once again, Ange Postecoglou made it clear, as he has done during that press conference, which we implore you to go and see if you haven't done already. Tottenham did have, going into the game, 9 senior players missing. Ange made 4 changes, just to be very, very clear, to his side. We saw for Tottenham, obviously, the fact that Dane Scarlett was cup-tied, which is why he wasn't part of the available squad. Making it into Tottenham's 11, we saw Pedro Porro, Lucas Bergvall, Matisse Tell all come in to the starting lineup, as well as 17-year-old Mikey Moore. Yves Bissouma, Pat Matassar dropped to the bench. That had 2 goalkeepers on it due to the number or lack of availability of players. Tottenham lined up Kinski, Porro, Danso, Gray, Spence, Bergvall, Bentancur, Kulusevski, Moore, Tel Son, with a bench of Austin, Forster, Hardy, Casanova, Reguilon, Davis, Bissouma, Sarr, Jaye. Villa, it took them just over a minute to go ahead against Tottenham. So Ange Postecoglou sending the boys out. A minute and a half later, the ball is in the back of our net. Ramsey got into the left-hand side of the box, and Kingsley made an absolute mess of the save as it squirmed behind him into the Villa net. I tell you, I mean, what a way to start a game after you're trying to mentally recover from the Liverpool game. Russ, can you talk me through what happened with this goal? I mean, poor Russ, I think he's just trying to get a boiled sweet down in there. I'm so sorry, Russ. Can you talk me through what's happened on this goal? Tell me what's happened with this goal.
So open at the back, Pedro Porro all over the place again. And Kinski should have done better. Yes, but he didn't. But fortunately, he was there later on in the half, as I'm sure you're going to mention, when he made a couple of absolutely brilliant saves. We could have been 2 or 3 down. You know, Villa could have had 5 today. But this is not obviously a great start to the game at all. No. And this is the problem, Rick, that all of the teams with good coaches who play us know how to unpick us. And they're all doing it time and time again, mostly, save for recently Brentford. Yeah. It happens all the time.
I think, Miles, just to come on to you on that goal in particular, I mean, the press is so open for that goal in a way that many would argue that the injury crisis doesn't mitigate for it, because when you are losing your best players, that's obviously going to have some impact in terms of the way you're going to play in possession, but it maybe you argue should have less impact in certain phases, like a structured press, which clearly isn't there to be seen by the nature of this first goal. But there also seems to be like a bit of a confusion, Miles, as to whose responsibility certain players are. I mean, for this first goal, when you look at where Pedro Porro is in regards to this Villa break, I mean, this is the first minute and a half of a football game, Miles. Are these players ignoring their duties or simply deliberately not following what they're being asked to do? What one is it?
Ricky, there's no excuse to be a minute into this game, and that's the picture we see. There's no excuse.
And just for our listeners and audio, the picture we're seeing is Villa cutting through us in that opening minute and 37 seconds.
See, the only thing I can give where the Danso is probably so far back compared to the rest of the 3, but that's where he hasn't trained with the boys. That's not on him. That's just the nature of the beast. But the fact that Porro is that far up and Spence is where he is, and we're a minute and 42 seconds when that goal goes in, that's disgraceful. That's not on having players fit. That is just players are just going out there and just going through the motions, clearly. And to have, and also when that pass is made, you have 4 players round, I don't know who makes the pass, is that Rodgers? And not one of them puts in an effort in the first minute to stop that going through. That's again, that's down to their desire and the tactics that they're being thrown out there. Like, you can't pinpoint it. There's not much more I can say about it apart from that. That is clearly something wrong on the training ground, or something the manager is instructing that they should be doing that. First minute and Porro's there. Enough said.
And I think, again, look, I think everyone knows it's a save Kinski should make, right? I mean, you can't get away from that. I mean, what I would say, he would say I'm wrong maybe suggesting this. You know, Kinski has had 5 different defensive partnerships that he's had in front of him since he's come to the football club. So you can maybe argue that But does that impact him? Look, he should save it. I mean, that again, but even before that, there was massive chants about wanting Daniel Levy to leave the football club. Those were getting louder and louder across the game. There was a good fine save from Kingsley to deny Bailey. And there was at one point, I got to say in the first half, where Yuri Tielemans, who, to be fair, hasn't got the most blistering pace, he has run unchallenged from the halfway line to the edge of our box and nearly scored. And I think many are thinking, what is going on here? And it goes back to that point. And when you're seeing Ange come out and suggest to us these players are giving their absolute everything and it would be an agenda to accuse them of otherwise, that is what will get a lot of fans go up. I'm telling you, when you're suggesting to fans that there would be an agenda for criticising players when you're seeing the amount of space the opposition gets on a frequent basis during the game, it's baffling. And what I would just say is, what I don't understand as well is that why do we just insist and keep playing out when we clearly can't do it and it isn't working? And at some point, you've got to just go long. You know, whether it's for the greater good or not, you've got to sometimes go long. And we obviously had that. I've got to come over to you, Pat. I know this is difficult with Sonny. We have this huge opportunity for Sonny where Kulusevski sends more away, he puts it on a plate for Sonny, but the captain hits it pretty central for Martinez to save. I mean, Sonny, just to be clear, he's 6 yards out here, straight at the goalkeeper. It lacked any real conviction. Oh, Pat, I mean, Heung-Min Son, where are we? I know. Can I just say, Pat, I know, again, you are a massive Sonny fan. I know you love him very, very much. Look, I find just to be very clear, it's how I stand. And many might think I'm wrong about this. I see it distasteful to see people saying that he's washed, to see people saying that he's crap or he's... I mean, look, I'm watching a player that is slowly declining in front of my eyes, Pat. Is that the way you would see it, or is there anything more sinister you want to put on that at the moment?
Yeah.
Or is it the system? Is it the system?
No, I don't think it's the system. I think Sonny is an amazing player and he's still good. I think as well he has been rinsed. Like, he's absolutely been ran rugged, and you know, he's literally playing 90 minutes. The funny thing is, at the beginning of the season, I was really annoyed with Ange because he kept taking them off, and I was like, why does he keep taking Sonny off? Like, you know, he's one of our best players, our best finisher, and Son would play like 50 minutes, 40, 60 minutes, and literally be taken off at the 60-minute mark in every game, irrespective of how good he was. And I was like, okay, cool, Ange is protecting him, this, that. But now he's literally flogging him, and the guy's looks like he's drowning, and he doesn't want to be out there. And it's a shame because, like, I love Son. I think he's amazing. But right now, he's definitely not at the races. And I couldn't believe, like, Mikey Moore, that was such a brilliant pass. And I felt sorry for Mikey Moore because, obviously, he was the player who was sacrificed at half-time because Ange obviously got it wrong in the middle. And, unfortunately, something had to give. And if Mikey Moore, Sonny finishes that, Mikey Moore leaves with an assist, and it's 1-1, and we're right back in that game. Like, how did you not score that? You're one of the best finishers in world football, or, in the Premier League, or you used to be. I don't know if we can say that anymore. And you had the whole goal to either side, left hand or right hand. It's 1-1. And we're back in the game, even though we didn't deserve to be. And then you just never know. Momentum's on our side. The crowd start getting a bit shaky, and we can bring it to them. But obviously it didn't happen. And it's criminal, man. It's criminal. And another thing is, I know this is against the grain, it's not really what you asked, but Kinski, is he better than Van den Osten, really? Like, I'm seeing Kinski shaky in the Arsenal game, shaky midweek against Liverpool, and today he was definitely at fault for the first goal. There's no way that should be going in. Van den Osten has looked good every time I've seen him in Europe and domestically. I just don't understand. Again, I don't understand it. I really don't. Is Kinski better than Van den Osten right now? Probably not. So why does he keep giving him? And the guy just seems like he's drowning as well. Like, in the Arsenal game, he was way out of his depth. And you just say, okay, cool, first North London derby, this, that. Liverpool game, he was shaky as fuck. And today he made a few good saves, but that goal that he let in was criminal. Like, that was just, it's not justified. It's not warranted. Like, he shouldn't be making that mistake. And then obviously we've got a mountain to climb. We're already low on confidence, and then he just does that. And then also there was a point where he literally, the ball was played back to him. And like you said, Ricky, sometimes go long, sometimes mix it up. The ball's played back to him, and he almost fumbled the ball over the line and just about got his feet in right. And you're just like, what's going on here, man? And how is Ange as a coach seeing this and not screaming some sort of instructions to somebody, or trying to like, if we don't have someone on the pitch who can scream at the players and say something, how is the manager not doing that? So when I see Ange come out after the game and say, "Oh, the players are giving it their all and this and that," and the guy's just standing there like a statue, irrespective of what's going on, it just baffles me. It's just insane. So I don't know, man. It's, you know, like we can look at and dissect every single game, but it's just the same stuff that keeps happening, and we're just so easy to play against, like Russ said and like Marlon said. The way these guys were just literally, when Tillemans did that, I thought, okay, this is 2-0, game over. Luckily, Tillemans didn't really catch the shot.
The amount of
I
space
know,
we're giving the opposition, Pat.
it's insane. We're so easy to play against. Every
Man.
player or every team has their best day
Can
or
I just
best
say
day at
that
the office against us.
Kinski, I mean, it's on Kinski, Pat. I will also say, I think he made a couple of really good saves later on in the game.
He did.
I mean,
He
a couple of
did,
reflex saves.
But
I think
I'm not sold on him right now. I can't lie to you. I'm not sold on him. I can't lie. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you.
I think there's a reason why Kinski has not been included in the Europa League squad. And I think they wrote that, obviously, Vicario is still very much the number one. There's no doubt about that. But, I mean, I have to ask you very quickly, Marlon, just in regards to Sonny, the miss, Marlon, where are we in your mind with Sonny at the moment? Will we ever see that form of Sonny where he would be using that pace to really terrify an opposition? Because right now, this is not the Sonny that we're used to. Is that it? I mean, is this the way he's going to lead the club? Like in his nature of the way he's playing right now?
It's down to, look, at the end of the day, it's down to the way the team are playing. We clearly know Sonny has the attributes to be a very good player, but his confidence is shot. He's because he's the captain of the club. It's not working out for him. He's probably taking an extra bit of responsibility that we're not seeing, and you can see it in his gameplay. He's just getting frustrated. He's not even doing the simple stuff, but even the free kick today where he kicks it and you're just like, what are you doing, Sonny? These are decisions that he doesn't usually make. So I think there's a lot on him at the moment, and I'm not going to sit there and say he's past it and dismiss him, because let's go back to the Brentford game 2 weeks ago, and he's got the 2 assists. So there is something still there, but I just, at the present moment in this tough situation, I feel like we have to take Sonny out of it and then put him back in when the team, he's whatever. If the team plays well, Sonny plays well. If the team's not playing well, Sonny is all over the place. And I think at the moment it's a catch-22 situation, because I really hope this ain't the end of Sonny with us. But at the present moment, if Ange stays and this carries on, then we're going to see more and more of these performances from Sonny, unfortunately. So it's one or the other.
Do you see Russ as a situation where we get the Son back that we know Sonny can be? Or is this Sonny going through a period of decline where it's hard to see a light at the end of the Sonny tunnel that we know what he can be?
I think, we've seen a slow, gradual decline. There's still magic in the boots, like we saw, against Brentford, as Miles was saying. But I think we have to recognise he's getting older. And look, he could be playing with a slight injury. We don't know, for example.
He's definitely knackered. He's knackered as well. He's knackered, of course. He's
fatigue, I don't think Ange necessarily uses him in the right way. He would say, well, I'm forced to play him where I play him. He should have scored that goal today. He would have scored that goal today, but he's lost a bit of pace. But he's still an absolute legend at the football club. But legends know when to hang their boots up as far as playing for the club that he's played for. So, maybe a bit of rest, over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to see a newly invigorated Son. But I think, it's just a natural thing that he isn't quite the player he was 2 or 3 seasons ago. I don't think anyone should be surprised, really.
No. I will double down that point I made earlier. I know, Pat, again, you've got some concerns over Kinski. I think he makes a couple of really good saves that do keep Tottenham in the game. I have to say that, from my perspective, a couple of really good saves. You can't go away from the fact he has to save the first one. He needs to save the first one. And then we have a situation where Bergvall lunges on Rodgers. Look, I mean, am I going to go at Bergvall lunging on a player? Probably not, because I need to see more of that from a lot of these players. If I saw half what Bergvall's been giving out there, then maybe I wouldn't be so critical of some of the players. All I can say is that we get to half time, and you know what? I think we're very lucky to be going off the field at 1-0. I think, Villa, for what they put into the game, would be thinking to themselves, how have we not come off more than 1-0? Spurs, to be fair, they weren't playing any better than the Liverpool game. All that leads to the shot on target in the first half, and only losing 1-0 again, it could have been, a lot worse. Second half, Tottenham, they make a change. Yves Bissouma replaces Mikey Moore. Moore, obviously, of course, had that lovely bit of play where he gave Son the opportunity to equalise, foul to happen. Kulusevski puts Son away, but Bogarde gets a foot to his shot, deflects it over. Kulusevski kills a shot at Martinez. Tell gives away the ball, and that unfortunately leads to Spurs' second goal, where we have a situation where just before that, you've got Porro, Bentancur, Bergvall all picking up bookings. Some would say that frustration is taken over. But the Villa second goal, I mean, again, what do you say about it? I mean, Tell does give away the ball aimlessly. It sets Villa away. Porro makes an absolute mess in clearing it. And then the ball falls to Rodgers to absolutely smash it in for 2-0. And I think what really kind of puts the game to any real rest, that it's going to be very hard for Spurs to get back into the game because of the timing of the goal on the hour mark, just over that. I mean, again, Russ coming over to you, a catalogue of errors that gets us into that second goal. How many times have we seen it, though, Russ? We've seen it so many times this season, the way in which that second goal plays out. So many errors in there.
Yeah. I was as upset about it as everybody else, but, expected something like that. And, Morgan Rodgers is a very, very good footballer. He's going to be a top international as well. And he's been playing really well for Villa, and he's in the right place at the right time. But how Pedro Porro didn't get a clean connection on that ball to clear it, I'll never know. I mean, it was Keystone Cops again. It's just so disappointing, Rick. Because we could have done better in this game, but we also could have lost by a lot more. And I just thought, well, obviously when that went in, game over, and even though we had played a little bit better in the second half, but it's the defending and the midfield that are the major issues with our team.
I have to say as well, this won't make anyone feel better with me saying this, but I think if you watch the individual compilation of Asensio and how much he made an effect for Villa during that game, you'd be maybe asking questions to why maybe Tottenham didn't necessarily look at someone like that as a profile of player to come in. But as we know, look how long it took us to get over the line. Tell, but the fact it took the manager, who's under fire, to go and personally equip himself to go and bring him in, that tells you where Spurs are at. Look, Spurs really need to capitalise on that spell before, where there was an argument they were maybe starting to feel their way back into the game. It never materialised. Sarr replaced Bentancur. And to be fair, there should have been a goal back where Porro put a ball across 6-yard box. Danso hooked it wide. Look, I've got very little criticism for Danso. I think he's played fairly okay over the course of the last couple of games. You're asking a player that hasn't played for nearly a month to come in and give you a performance over the course of the last 4 days. I think my blame lies a lot more further with some of the other players that have been there that I haven't seen enough from. But Tell does get Tottenham back in the game. Marl, to come over to you. And it's a lovely finish from Matthias Tell where, he scores on his full debut, get into Kulusevski's curling cross. Many would argue this is the silver lining of what's been a horrendous week for the football club. I'm just wondering what Matthias Tell thinks he's joined over the course of this last week. Do you think, what does he think he's joined, Marl?
To be fair to him, it was either Russell and Man United. Both are just as bad as each other.
Possibly.
But no, realistically, that was probably the first time we actually put one of those balls into the box. We kept trying to go down the right and cross it back, and it just wasn't working. Villa were getting it out. And that was the first time we actually went back to Kulu, and Kulu stuck it in. And it was a good move. Like, why don't we do more of this where we switch it up a little bit?
I think Pat suggested, why did he not play that position in the first half? We'll come over to Pat in a second.
Yeah,
it's a great finish. I have to say, it's a great finish. To be fair,
it was a great finish. And Tell actually looked. You know what? I did agree with Pat, but I would, after the first 20-30 minutes, I would have seen that and gone, actually, this is not working for me. Swap them about. Like, you could clearly see Tell wasn't comfortable on the left, and straight away, because Sonny wasn't really comfortable playing up top. But as soon as you switched them about in the second half, we kind of looked quite decent. But yeah, it was a good look. If he can do more of that for the next few weeks, I've got no problem with him. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, is this just kind of Will we only see this week? When he plays Manchester United next week, will we see something completely different? Will we have players back in certain position? Obviously, we've got Dane Scarlett obviously to come back next week as well. So we don't know. I don't know right now. I can't see. There's no light at the end of the tunnel for me at the moment, and it was a great finish. But was it just because Villa had run out of legs and we just managed to get in behind and put one bit of quality in, and Villa thought the game was done because they just saw the way Spurs were playing? And I don't know how to take it, but great finish. Let's see what happens over the next few months with him. But glad he's here. I am glad he's here because we needed a body, and from what I've seen so far, we definitely needed him.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, coming over to you on Tell, I mean, that was one thing you kept telling me about the first half is while we're not playing Tell in his right position, and then suddenly here by Crook, they switch him to his preferred position in the second half. He scores a goal, so yes, it comes late on, but does that just add to the frustration, Pat, at the moment that I know you feel right now that we're not being coached correctly, tactically, the right way that we need to be? Does that just add to your frustration, I guess, at the moment with regards to where we are in the manager, I guess?
Yeah, that's always been my gripe about Ange. Some of the decisions he makes in terms of player personnel and where he puts them, it's always a bit weird. He obviously got the middle of the park completely wrong. And granted, he made a change at halftime, so that was good. And then we looked a bit more solid. And like Marlon said, we did for the first 10 minutes, it looked like we were coming back into the game. And then obviously once they scored that goal where Pedro Porro has to clear that ball, like there was no need for him to just fall over and get such a weak connection on it. 2-0 down, it was a mountain to climb when we already were struggling at 1-0 down. But Tal, for me, has looked good in the last two games. Against Liverpool at Anfield, he was the only player that was showing some sort of fight. He was cheering the crowd up. He was telling players to run and press with him. He was actually doing essentially what a captain should do. He was echoing instructions to the team and to his teammates. He come on and he just didn't understand why no one else was fighting and running. So I really was impressed by that. He's only 19. It was his first game away at Anfield, and you could see he had something about him. And today he looked good as well. He's someone that hasn't played a lot of football, but you can see the touches, the movement is intelligent. Danso looked good for me as well. At least he's comfortable on the ball, can make a pass, he's solid, he's quick enough. So these are like the only like glimmers of hope, considering obviously how bleak it's been. And you just hope, like Marlon saying, with a couple more players coming back and a week off, we can somehow do something against United. But I thought Tell looked good. It was a very good finish against a good goalkeeper. I will give them the credit. Obviously, yes, Villa may have switched off, but it's still a good goal. And it gave us a bit of some sort of fight back. But then after that, the amount of the possession and the quality of the crosses that came in after we were trying to get a goal back were poor. So that was a disappointment. But Tell looks good. Danso looks good. I just hope we can. Yeah, obviously we need to improve massively, man. It's been a shambles, really, hasn't it? It's been a shambles, and the manager's comments today really confused me. Some of the players, the lack of fight and the oomph. Well, I would say it confuses me. I was about to say that, but it doesn't, because we've been here time and time again. And I just think some of these guys really need to go, like a massive clear out. But with the manager,
we let 11 go in the summer, Pat. But I agree with you.
I know. It's just
I don't mean this in a bad way. I look at players like, and even listen, people might think I'm mad saying this. Basuma and Bentancur.
Yeah, they got to go. In my opinion.
I don't see anything to tell me these players are going to improve at all.
Yeah,
I don't. I really don't.
Bring Donley in, spend 30-40 million on someone that's half decent. When I say half decent, ideally good.
I tell you, that's another thing. When you see what he done Donley on the Saturday, you think, how are we letting a player like that go on loan?
Exactly.
Look, I'm not saying Donley would do that. I'm not saying Donley would do that every week, but I'm saying when you look, we've got to work with right now with Bentancur and Basuma. I'd rather be giving the kid a chance.
Yeah, Donley played against a good Man City team. They played a strong team, and he looked comfortable on the ball. His technique is good. His range and weight of passing is good. Obviously, for him to try that, and unfortunately, he was credited as an own goal, but it was all him. Yeah. It was all him.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
And you look at him, and compared to the Basumas and the Bentancurs, fuck me, give him a chance, man. He looks way better than them. So next year we need a massive shake-up. The only problem is it's all well and good saying all of this, but that means the chairman has to invest massively. And will he do that? That's the problem.
I don't know. I mean, look, again, we're going to be some comments in here from, again, viewers and listeners that have come into the show. Daniel Leave Me says, I'm pretty sure Ange had a list of positions on the wall and pulls names out of a hat to fill them, utterly clueless. Kate and Jimbo says, hey, Ricky, Pat, Marlon and Russ, I've known the manager to be so protected. He's tactically inept. Get him gone whilst we have the Europa League to fight for. Look, I will just say as well, for what I'm reading out, there are still a lot of people that still feel Ange Postecoglou deserves more time and should be given that opportunity once he gets the players back. Again, everybody, that's why we do the show, is it's a fair, open debate, and there's still people that feel that, good on you if you still feel that. I think, again, these panelists have made their feelings clear. I think me as a host, where I feel I've made my feelings clear, is that I don't think Ange Postecoglou is the right man for Tottenham in the long term. However, I will say again, I see no benefit right now in sacking Ange Postecoglou if it's just to bring Ryan Mason and Matty Wells in for the remainder of the season. I see no uptake in that. I see no uplift in that. And I don't think Tottenham got a plan. One of these clubs got a plan. Their plan on deadline day, which shows you everything, is that they had to go and get the manager to go and tie up the attacker because they failed to do so 4 days before at a presentation and went to Germany and came back crawling without the player. Soulboy says here, unless we protest, we will not have a club to support for. And Time Today says time and where to meet for next Sunday's protest. Just to bring those details again as we look to close this show. And the details for that protest ahead of next week. This will take place Sunday the 16th of February, just before the Manchester United game. A March for Change, 2:45, the crossroads of the Lordship Lane High Road, and marching to the West Stand. Again, this is a call for all international fans to join, all Tottenham fans around the world that are coming to the game. And again, those words from Bill Nicholson, just to be clear, there is no use being satisfied when things are done wrongly. I want perfection. This is a moment to drive change and to stand together for Tottenham Hotspur. And I'll make that point again. Look, there's a lot of different views, a lot of different feelings out there from Tottenham fans right now. We don't speak for everybody. We can only speak how we feel in our minds. And look, all I would say is that everybody out there has got their own route, their own view and route to how Tottenham will be successful. We've all just got a different opinion on how to get there. I think we do all want the same thing, but I think, guys, and I'm not just clickbaiting and over-egging it here and headlining, I think we are at a point of a very important moment in our history as a football club. And I think, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, that if we do not come together and look to push for change as a whole, I am quite scared about what the future for this football club looks like. And I've got two beautiful boys, that are Tottenham fans. they're not old enough to understand yet, but I want them to be able to come to Tottenham and feel proud to support the team that I grew up loving through my dad and through generations and generations. And I really, really want those kids to feel the way I felt when I first went to see my Tottenham and go up those stairs at White Hart Lane. It won't ever be White Hart Lane. I think, I don't mean this in a bad way, but there was something very special about White Hart Lane. It's very hard to say to a lot of the younger fans, newer Tottenham fans out there. There was something just about White Hart Lane, the original White Hart Lane, that when you got inside, it just grabbed you. I really, really want that new stadium to be like that. It doesn't feel like that right now. I hope it does in time. I want to say, Pat, a massive thank you. You said to me this morning, bless you, I know you don't do many podcasts outside of Last Word on Spurs. So I'm really grateful that you come on here, you speak your truth. As we know, we can't please everybody. We can only tell it as it is.
Yeah, it's a bit mental. Like today, obviously, even after the result, you saw someone say, "I bet it's going to be a negative podcast." So I don't
know what to be positive. We've got out of 2 cups in the space of a week. We're 14th in the Premier League. I don't know what people want us to be.
I know.
What can we be? We're 14th in the league. We're out of 2 cup competitions. What do people want us to be right now?
With all due respect to Robbie and all those guys over there that I know, we're not AFTV. We're not going to rant and rave and swear and all of that stuff. But realistically, we are. This is probably the worst I can remember us being in. So it's not going to be like all positivity and false, fake, toxic positivity, because that's crazy.
I know what you want.
So we can always, all we can do is speak on it. This is my perspective and my view. Russ has got his, Marlon's got his, Ricky's got his, and all you beautiful fans out there have got yours. You're not always going to align and see it the way we see it, but hopefully you can understand why we're coming at you with the points we're coming at you. Just a quick one. Shout out to Ravin. Great guy. We're always talking and chopping it up.
Oh, Ravin, bless his heart.
I always say I'm going to shout him out, and I keep forgetting, and obviously we get torn left and right. Kate and Jimbo as well.
I wrap Ravin on what we said. Ravin, he works in the prisons. What's tougher right now? Imagine the prisons all supporting his football club.
So Kate and Jimbo, George, Christina, obviously. George, George, he was at the game today. So Yeah, man, that's a tough one. But
I tell you what, I mean,
listen,
God, if people think it's a negative podcast, they want to go see some of the other ones. I think this
it's
is
crazy.
what do people. What I don't know what
I,
people want us to do. I mean,
I
what
know
can we do?
we are
We're
in a
we're
tough
40th
time.
in the Premier League. We've got had 2
Yeah.
cups in the space of a week. We're never going to score to both of them of 6-1.
We've got a manager that's saying crazy things right now. It's hard to be positive, but obviously, yes, there's some positives in it. Danso looked quite good. Tell scoring his first goal.
Yep.
Obviously, the youngsters look good. Mikey Moore should have had an assist. Archie Gray, bless his cotton socks, is always standing up tall. Jed Spence, yet again, looks good. So there are, of course, there's positives, but we are really rubbish at the moment. We have to be honest. But all we can do is hopefully hope this is the lowest it gets, and then we can start going like that. So yeah, that's all I can say.
And I have said this through again the show. I mean, look, how many times can I keep on saying we've got 9 injuries? How many times can I keep on saying we've had 10, 11, 12? How many times can I just keep on saying what am I meant to judge it on anymore? I don't know. I mean, Miles, I want to say again a massive thank you to you. Like I say, you've become firmly embedded in this community at a point where there is no get out. There is no way of leaving.
No.
Thanks, Rick. Rick, I just wanted to ask, and this is a genuine question. I don't need to go on. But everyone keeps saying today, Liverpool made 9 changes. Look what happened to them. But I'll ask this question back to everybody else that's saying that to you.
Go on, please.
If you went and said, right, those 9 changes in 10 games' time had not improved, would you think they would improve under Slot? Yes or no? This will answer your question about what's really going on. And I think a lot of you would go, if they had played 10 consistent games together, those 9 players, I bet you would see them start picking up results as time went on and Slot would start to understand them. That's the difference right now. You can't judge it by what they made today because we were back in December. But it'd be interesting to get everyone else's point of view in the chat in the comments and stuff to go on that. But that's all. But Rick, thanks as always for having me on. I love coming on, but this is probably the last month has been stressful. I'm not gonna lie.
I know. But you're saying you are firmly in the Truman Show now, and there is no get out. And you know what I will also say on that point, Mars, is that look, the thing is, we have sat here every week, and the first thing that I've opened with and said is we've got injuries, we've got 8 or 9 changes, we've had 8 or 9 players out. I'm not sitting here suggesting that doesn't have an impact on the team. Of course, it has an impact on the team. But the question I would ask back to every single fan that are asking about the 8-9 changes is, with the changes that we're making, is anybody seeing any kind of uplift in our performance in the manner of how we are dealing with what we're dealing with right now? Because I tell you, if I was, I know we're playing every 3 or 4 days, but if I was seeing, in my opinion, the players showing me through different elements that we are getting better, I would sit here and say, do you know what? We need to give this more time. We are over-evaluating. We are making rash judgments, rash decisions. But just to be very, very clear, we sat here 12 months ago where Spurs went through an injury crisis, got the injured players back, and had a second half of the season that showed you that we're not improving. And we now fast forward to this season where we have to be honest and real. It hasn't really got off the ground. And yes, for a second season, we've been decimated by injuries. And look, I will say this again, bar the likes of Bergvall, Gray and Spence, who I think have progressed due to the fact they're now playing games. And many might say it's the agenda that I'm having here. Kulusevski be moved to a central role. I have not seen over the course of the last 18 months now to judge it on enough progression individually on players that gives me the confidence that whether you give Ange Postecoglou more money, whether you give Ange Postecoglou better players, that he can be successful at this job at Tottenham. I do think Ange Postecoglou will go elsewhere and will win with another club and will go on and do well. I just don't think that club anymore is Tottenham. And I will say this again, nothing personal against Ange Postecoglou. I wish him the very, very best. What I will just say is that when I look at Ange in pressers now, I feel for the guy. I look at a guy that is honestly broken. He looks like he needs to rest himself. And that's why, again, I will say this, that this podcast for me, it's not about agendas. It's not about going after managers. We are here to talk Tottenham and we are here to give our feelings on the football club. And what I see in Ange Postecoglou is a man that has given everything to the job through difficult adversity. and is just not up to the task. And I wish him all the very, very best. And I will say this, if Ange Postecoglou turns this around, there will not be a happier fan than me if he gets Tottenham winning, because that is all I want. All I want to do is see Tottenham winning. Russ, I'll let you have the final word. Thank you so much. Sorry to put you through this. It's been a tricky show. But I think you agree, Russ. All we want to do is see Tottenham winning games and Tottenham progressing.
Of course. And if it happens under Ange, by hook or by crook, great. Fabulous. Tell us a striker, all right? Don't play him wide. He's a striker. That's what he needs to learn straight away. Well, I'm with Pat. You know, these players are slightly out of position and they don't know what they're doing. They're playing like strangers. But in general terms, you know, it's difficult to be positive at the moment. And people say, oh, you know, you guys are negative and what have you. Let me assure you, whether you agree with Pat's opinion or disagree with mine or Miles or Ricky, obviously the supreme leader, it's fine. It's actually allowed. We're all fans of the same football club, and even if you're for example, your views are diametrically opposed to mine on the club, I guarantee you we could sit down and have a beer and we'd actually enjoy each other's company. This is not about falling out with anyone and, you know, getting personal and nasty. I have some great interactions on X with people who, you know, see me on the show or watch the show, Rick, and I didn't like that, and then you get in a conversation with them, and in the end, you know, you go, actually, you got a point, and they go, yeah, actually, you have as well. You know, we all, it's frustration and anger and this sort of groundhog club football that we're sitting in at the moment that creates a lot of sort of Tottenham hormones that some people, including ourselves, find a little difficult to control. And so, you know, we've got to stick together, and it is going to start, as you've been mentioning many times, ahead of the Man United game, Rick. And oh, goody, I'm here after that one again. But Tell can leave, you know. He doesn't have to hang around at Spurs if he doesn't want to. Hopefully he will.
Oh, I got to say, again, look, I want to say a massive, massive thank you to the wonderful Russ Williams, the superb Patrick Tyrant, the brilliant Marlon over at the Spurs Kings. And again, I think it's really important that we make that point that, you know, the reality where Tottenham are right now, we know things aren't good enough. That's why we implore you ahead of next Sunday, please stand with those fans that feel change needs to happen. Again, we'll make that point next Sunday, the 16th of February, March for Change. Change for Tottenham. Please follow those guys across the social media for more information on the protest and more. We've been the last one on Spurs. We thank you again for all your incredible support for the show. Keep the faith, and we'll be back if anything does change, of course, in the next 24, 48 hours. And as always, come on, you Spurs.